Good morning and welcome to I think it's the third one, isn't it, of the instalments on lino cutting. What we're going to be doing this morning is working off my first instalment where we had sort of some of these tools and some others making marks in the lino and doing those few testers. I'm returning to the cave image which I produced in the dry point series, and using the tools in front of us here I'm going to be creating the cave scene again. You'll notice there are no traditional lino cutting tools, and when I mean traditional lino cutting tools, something like that or similar, of which you cut your lino. I will be going into that in the next video, but this video is primarily about seeing what can be done and how much can be done with these sort of more interesting and, well, more interesting, it's relative, but these non-traditional tools, let's say. I'm going to just crack on. You'll all have recognised these from the first video. We're going to start by doing the actual cave. Going to return to the Dremel. You'll notice I use a Dremel a lot. It's not essential, there are other tools here, but it is useful. You can also, look around the house. There might be lots of other things that are not here that you might have. Old dental tools one student had, old surgeon's tools, just old tools in general usually have some quite interesting marks. What we're going to be doing is, and I think I'm going to change the head of this, so I think I need the different connector. I'm going to start by drawing my foreground cave. Let's wiggle this out. Sometimes they can get a bit stuck. There we go. And I'm putting in a very tiny mark, sort of a very tiny line tool. To be honest, I don't know what half these tools are meant to be used for. I use them for the purpose I use them. Now, when using the Dremel, please, as I mentioned earlier, use suitable face protection and ventilation. I usually have the door open or do it outside. I can't do that today for various reasons, so I fashioned a face mask, which I'm about to put on, over my nose and mouth. Please bear with this because I won't be able to talk much, and I can't talk much anyway, so go and do that now. tool I used was another sort of line tool, those slightly chunkier lines. You can see it kind of spreads all the bits around. We'll clean that up before inking. Don't worry about it too much now. You can begin to see what's happening. I've literally just sort of scuffed in my cave. I'm going to use now Zester, returned from the dry point. And I'm going to zest out some grass areas. And of course with Lino, and you know I say of course, you're working in the negative. So the areas I am zesting out or taking away from the Lino will be your paper colour, because the ink sits on the top surface. Now the reason I don't sort of go into actually explaining this, because I think sometimes you can get so carried away with Lino and relief printing with so much technical detail, and it's all really boring, and it's just far easier just to get on with it. And you kind of pick it up from the videos, you know, and if you don't, that's absolutely fine, it's not a problem. Go and find an amazing YouTube video, and there will be loads, on just the principles of working in relief, and then, you know, come back. It's no issue. But in my own videos, I'm not going to do that, because I like people just to get stuck in and learn as they go. Next, I'm going to use this rusty nail, and I'm going to press quite hard. I'm going to use this to do the hills in the background. Oop. Create some texture in the background of the hills. And the deeper you go with the relief work, I'm just going to get a cutting mat. The deeper you go with the relief work, the more chance that you won't get any ingress of ink into your marks. Because some of these marks, as we know, are quite subtle. I'm going to use one of these 6-inch nails now, and my hammer, and do some sort of suppose they are grass seed marks. Rather satisfying. Okay, got the cheese grater, nutmeg grater, whatever it is here. I'm going to add some more details to the grass, just stuff it up a bit more. Kind of flick it, because I want to try and get those grass flicks. Watch your fingers doing all of this, obviously. Some nice big ones. Okay. And again, as with the dry point, I'm overloading it with information here in these early stages. We will then, throughout the videos, pare back and actually sort of bring in what we want and what we don't want. And the tricky one is the fire. I'm going to do the smoke. Actually, I should do that afterwards. I'm going to attempt to draw it as I did in the dry point with an etching needle. We're going to see what happens and how it prints. These lines might fill in, we don't know. Again, it's always about having a play. I don't think I'm going to attempt a billy can. That might be something when we start combining it with traditional tools that would be perfect for the job. But there you go, I can get some sort of log thing going on. And some smoke. That's using the rotary dressmaking marker again. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the needle again to create some tree trunks. I'm pressing quite hard, and you know, this isn't This isn't gentle lino cutting. It's therapeutic of its own kind, not of the cutting lots of tiny little beautiful even dots kind. It's more of the batty or lino kind. But hey, that's okay, has its place. Just rubbing off all those sort of extra bits that get caught. I'm going to use the needle again to add some quite violent looking pine trees. Had a bit of a storm. In fact, let's make it a storm. Let's do some ones without only tops on. And just some branches, some naked pines. It's all good fun. Okay. And unlike the dry point something, because this is the relief method of working, you're working literally with ink sitting on the top surface. When I say the deeper you press, it means there's more chance your mark will not get ink in filling it. It will not have ink on the inside. But it's not pressure sensitive. The mark is either there or it's not there, so to speak. Okay, next I'm going to go back to the Dremel. So let's move all this out of the way. I need to change that, or do I? No. I'm going to go to the little sort of, called it a chimney sweep, but it's a tiny little wire wool brush. And I'm going to use that for the background, and I add some sort of cloud marks, and I'm also going to just soften some of the caves so it becomes a bit more interesting. Right, so mask going back on. Just tie it back up. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly give that a tap off outside and blow it off. Lovely to hear the birds. Okay, there we go. Before we get any ink out, we clear away these tools. And I'm just going to wipe down this area. I'm just using water. So that we don't get any of this, especially the really fine Dremel dust and the last tool we used in the lino. It's also worth giving your lino a quick wipe over. When you use that, try not to wet the back of the lino, because the jute will absorb the water and will curve up. You have curvy lino, which is not really a problem, but it just makes it more difficult to work with. Okay, let's give that a waft to blow it. In comes my hand printing device. Final dry wipe, and just trying to make sure I get no bits, especially when you're doing all this textural work. You end up with a lot of bits which can get in your ink. Okay. Now you'll remember in the last one we had a moon just there. We're going to do a moon again, but that is kind of the perfect example for using traditional tools, get a nice crisp edge. Because I'm not doing this and my tools are sort of hidden away out of sight, I'm cutting a tiny moon out of a piece of tissue paper, and we're going to plop that on before we print it as a mask, so that the moon is bright white. And masks are something I'm going into the next video, and they are really useful in lino cutting. Okay, so there's our moon mask, must not lose that. Inking up, I'm using Intaglio Relief Litho ink, just their shop ink again, the standard stuff I've been using the whole time. It's exactly the same ink I used for inking up the dry point, which in some people's minds is probably the wrong thing to do. I find it does the job. I'm not too precious at this stage. I just want to get it done, and I find it really, really good ink. Make sure you've got no bits in your ink. Take those to the side if you do. And if you listen, it's a nice hiss. But I'm actually going to put a touch more on, because of all the little delicate marks. I'm really concerned we will put too much ink on, and that we'll lose our lovely delicate marks. Have a listen again. So it's slightly thicker. It's still thinner than probably most people would use in lino, but what we're using today. Now you'll notice my roller width is just a bit bigger than the lino edge, and if you can, that's ideal, because otherwise you end up with tram lines, which are the edge of your rollers marking across the lino. You can obviously work with what you have, but ideally that's the case. We have a high textured piece of lino, it's rather fun. And I'm just building up the layers gradually. Going over nice and slowly, recharging my roller, going back. Again, I'm watching it every time. Things like the trees have a tendency with the etching needle to infill because they're not very deep marks. So I'm just, checking it each time. Enjoy this stage. I love inking up. I think it's probably that and cleaning. I'm actually one of those weird printmakers who love cleaning areas. I think I'm going to roll with that. Oh, I might give it one more. And you'll notice I'm not going backwards, forwards, because as soon as I go, it's difficult to show you with the black, but as soon as I go over, you're getting an image of this on your roller. And so if you then go back again, you'll get a repeat of that image in a different part, so you won't get an even inking up. So I find now this isn't a proper clean, bear in mind I'm just getting rid of the worst, ready for printing. So there we go. I'm going to be printing on, if you can see that, I'll try and hold it, I'm not very good at holding it. It's an Origami Factory piece of paper. This is just still from their sample pack. I'm kind of just going through all their samples and seeing which one works. This is now forgive the pronunciation, a Kitakata Select 90 grams. Again, there's its label, if that can be seen. I'll leave that, if I leave that there, then if you're interested, I'm sure you can work out how to zoom in. But it's an absolutely brilliant factory, I cannot recommend their papers enough. As I say, I'm just going through their sample pack, just because it's quite good fun to print on different papers. Got my little moon. So I'm going to pop that somewhere there. Just making sure I'm printing on the correct side. There is of Japanese paper a smoother side and a rougher side. I'm printing on the smooth side today. Ordinarily I also print on the rough side. It depends what you're after. But technically there is a right and wrong side. I'm using my hand printing barren. You can use a wooden spoon. I'm just applying pressure. I'm holding it firmly with my other hand. I'm just checking it here and there whilst holding the paper, just to check I'm applying the pressure correctly. Getting nice edges. I always think if you've got an edge in your print, make it the best edge you can, because otherwise it's really annoying. You have a beautiful print and then you don't clean your edges down, or you don't get them nice and crisp, and it can actually really let down the print. If you don't want edges crisp and clean, don't have them, that's fine. But if you've got them there to be crisp and clean, I always say make them crisp and clean. And I'm using all parts of my printing barrel, the flat area here, the tip to get the edges or get into areas. Again, same with the wooden spoon. I'll use the bowl of it, the tips of it, looking nice. And again, as with the previous video, looking under a press and under by hand, the range of blacks and densities will change, whether it's under a press or by hand. I'm printing by hand because I'm aware a lot of people may not have a press, and Lino can be printed by hand, so where I can, I'm going to be doing that. It seems to make sense to me. And a lot of my own Lino I print by hand on the kitchen floor, so you're in good company. There we go. Move that up a bit. That looks pretty awesome. Got a nice black. And this paper is slightly buff. It's a kind of creamy buff colour. So it's not clean white. Some really nice textures going on in the cave. The trees look really funky. Some nice grated grass. The nails coming through. My little campfires there. And you can see the possible mark making is, the range is quite phenomenal, even if you don't have access to traditional tools. And that was all done with stuff I've found or I use. Okay, the Dremel is something that you may have to get from a friend or something, but there are alternatives. You can hand sand things. And that's really cool. I hope you've enjoyed that. And I'm off to film the next one now.